we have an exclusive sit-down interview with the new head coach of the Indiana Fever. She was the 2023 WNBA Coach of the Year, an NCAA champion, a baller herself, a WNBA champion, and my former broadcasting teammate. What's up, Stephanie White?
What's going on? How are you?
Stephanie White entered the Indiana Fever locker room with a clear mission: to transform a young, talented roster into a championship contender. Her first priority was crafting a bulletproof strategy to elevate Caitlin Clark's game to a level that no defense could anticipate or contain.
Looking up all of your history and stories, and I'm like, this is a real Indy gal. Like, born in Indiana, you played your college ball in Indiana at Purdue, you played for the Fever in the WNBA along other stops. In coaching, you actually were an assistant coach with the Fever, and now here you are, back as the head coach of the Indiana Fever.
Behind closed doors, Stephanie White has been designing a revolutionary system aimed at unleashing Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell like never before. The technical details she's now revealing lay out exactly how she plans to disrupt the WNBA hierarchy and fast-track Indiana's rise to the top. This isn't just a rebuild, it's a complete reinvention. So what exactly is White's game plan? And how does it differ drastically from the approach of former Fever coach Christy Sides? If you're fired up for the Fever's season, drop champions in the comments below. Let's go.
You've got an interesting roster that you're heading into as the head coach, and we focus in on the now for the Indiana Fever. You've got a unique locker room. It is undoubtedly super talented, but it's such a mashup of unique personalities, and I'll also say established storylines for each of these players. There aren't some players that haven't figured out what they're about, or the storyline hasn't been created for them in the W. And you've got all of this coming into your locker room. So, season's on the way. What are going to be your first priorities? Maybe even exercises in creating common ground and meshing this.
When Stephanie White returned to Indiana, she didn't just bring a clipboard and a whistle. She came armed with the blueprints for a basketball empire. Now, just a few months into her tenure, we're beginning to see the foundation take shape. And it's clear, her vision goes far beyond simply assembling talent.
One of the early conversations, for us as a coaching staff, has just been about connection and building a relationship, and, approaching the players who were in that locker room a year ago in hey, what is it that you want to accomplish? What is it that we can help you? You don't know what you don't know, right? And most of those guys were pretty young, certainly pretty young in terms of playoff experience. And then approaching them in sort of a self-scout way. This is what we would do to you when we played you.
The Fever's 20-20 record last season may appear respectable on paper, but for those who watched them face off against the league's top teams, the reality was clear. There's another level waiting to be reached. Christy Sides and the supporting cast simply couldn't measure up against championship-caliber teams like New York and Las Vegas. The disparity in execution and defensive cohesion was unmistakable. Even with stars like Clark, Mitchell, Boston, and Hull, it wasn't enough. White recognized that what was needed was a complete overhaul of the system.
Players are going to help us on the defensive end of the floor, which has been our greatest deficiency. And so I think that having veteran players who understand what it is to be a part of this organization, who are not afraid of all of the things that come with being a part of the Indiana Fever, and who ultimately, at the end of the day, are great teammates, great people, and just want to.
What's particularly fascinating is White's unwavering focus on defense as the foundation of her championship aspirations. While fans rave about Caitlin Clark's logo threes, Kelsey Mitchell's electrifying scoring, Aaliyah Boston's dominance in the post, and Lexi Hull's sharpshooting, White understands an uncomfortable truth. Offensive firepower alone won't bring championships to Indianapolis. The Fever allowed 82.2 points per game last season, ranking them in the league's bottom half. Championship DNA starts with stops, not just highlight reel buckets.
Really important who we added in free agency and in the offseason fit who we already had. I mean, look, our big three with Caitlin and Kelsey and Aaliyah, you got to have certain kinds of vets that fit around them. That, number one, fill the gaps that we need in our lineups, in our rosters. But number two, have accomplished multiple things that can lead them in a way that they haven't been led before, but also understand where they fit in the scope of what the Indiana Fever is about now and what we're about in the future, and that give us a chance to compete for champions.
The recent roster moves shed light on White's strategic vision. Dana Borner wasn't brought in solely for her scoring ability. She brings what White refers to as mother hen energy, fiercely competitive while simultaneously fostering the growth of younger talent.
Bonner, who, again, winner, right, has won at every level, competed and won for a championship in Phoenix, competed for championships with us in Connecticut. Versatility, which is critical for our system and what we want. Ultra competitive. But also like a mother hen, right? So can be that one that can like push you and challenge you, but also like embrace you and hug you and help you understand all the things that go along with the ups and downs and the long season that we have, this sprint marathon of a season.
Natasha Howard isn't just another interior defender. She's a player who understands the demands of championship aspirations, thanks to her experience with Seattle.
You think about bringing in Natasha Howard, who was drafted by the Indiana Fever when I was an assistant coach, was traded by the Indiana Fever when I was the head coach, just went out and won multiple championships after that, continued to
winners.
Absolutely, to continue to become one of the greatest players in the history of our league, played every different kind of role. Is soft-spoken, so when she speaks, you listen because it matters, right? Gives us a little bit different look at that position than we've had before.
These veterans aren't just random additions. They are carefully selected puzzle pieces designed to complement Clark's playmaking, Boston's dominance in the paint, and Mitchell's scoring ability. White isn't building a roster of individual stars, but rather an interconnected unit where each player's strengths amplify the others.
Cunningham, toughness, right?
Tough.
Winner. Ability to play multiple positions, has played with tough competitors. I mean, was essentially mentored by the all-time greatest in Diana Taurasi, right? So now she can be that mentor. She can be that player who comes in and brings us that toughness and that swag, yet keeps our versatility, can knock down shots, which shot making is so important, for us, and take some pressure off of our big three, because all of these other guys can do their own thing, right? But when they fit with what we have, I think it makes us really, really...
The most fascinating aspect of White's approach is how she draws from her previous coaching experiences, particularly her understanding of what it takes to build a contender from the ground up. Having seen firsthand how championship cultures are cultivated, she's applying those lessons with surgical precision in Indiana. White knows that championship DNA can't simply be taught in film sessions. It must be lived, embodied, and passed down from veterans who've reached the summit. That's why Borner and Howard aren't just fulfilling roles on the court. They're instilling championship habits in practices, film sessions, and team meals.
Generational talent. Sometimes that word is thrown around, but I think it's really fitting here for Caitlin and her talent and her potential at the point guard position.
Those championship habits are essential, but they are just one piece of White's master plan. Ever wonder why the most unstoppable players in basketball aren't always the ones with the ball? Stephanie White certainly does. Her revolutionary strategy for Caitlin Clark challenges everything we thought we knew about the rookie phenom's game.
From just a straight basketball perspective, making sure that we help her diversify, her finishing ability, diversify in the way that it's not predictable, to be able to be equal in terms of production and facilitation going right.
Caitlin Clark's historic debut season came with a hidden price. With the ball in her hands nearly every possession, she faced a relentless wave of defensive pressure that only grew more complex as the season progressed. Double and triple teams became routine, traps arrived earlier, and by season's end, opponents had essentially designed their entire defensive game plans around one goal: stop number 22 at all costs.
To have different types of finishing looks, whether it's, crossbody finishes, whether it's floaters at the rim, whether it's quick floaters, long floaters, Euros. You can't quite be as fundamentally predictable with as much athleticism, speed, quickness, and as much as the game plan is going to be geared toward.
The defensive attention Clark received created a predictability problem. When she couldn't break free, the Fever's offense often stalled. That's where White's off-ball revolution comes into play. Rather than having Clark initiate every possession, White plans to transform her into a movement-based weapon, one capable of striking from anywhere on the court.
For us as coaches is how do we get a rest when she's on the floor while she's playing, right? Like while she's on the floor. And some of that's going to be playing off ball, utilize her as a screener, getting her into action on the third and fourth side instead of the first and second, where it's easy to game plan against. How we use her to help everybody else be better off the ball. We know how great she is with the ball in her hands. We're not going to take that away, but we've got to be able to diversify a bit in how we
This strategy mirrors how the Golden State Warriors utilize Steph Curry. Constant movement that wears down defenders while opening up unexpected scoring opportunities. One moment, Clark might be setting a screen. The next, she's emerging for a three-pointer from an angle that defenses never saw coming.
Got like a short-term kind of list, and we got a long-term kind of list. But Caitlin, I remember from the very first day when we were working on balance and we were working on footwork and we were looking at all those things, from day 1 to day 2, she had it.
Wow.
Like she's a perfectionist, and she wants it, and she's going to work on it. So that long list might get shorter every day we're in practice.